Welcome, low ego action heroes. It's Debbie from Delta CX. You can check us out at customercentricity.com, which I'm still working on. And today is Office Hours Ask Us Anything. We're going to have a special guest joining us in just a moment. But first, as always, let's give thanks. Please, everyone, kneel with me and give thanks to all the lovely people donating to the channel in small and large amounts, past, present, and future. Thank you for keeping me in streaming software and chocolate chips. They are both delicious and good for me. Next, I've got to work on weight loss. So if anybody knows how to sponsor that, let me know. But what else did I want to tell you? Hey, don't forget that the workshop that Larry Marine and I are doing is now on sale. You can find a link to it at the bottom of cxcc.to/space. And at the bottom of that, you'll see a link to more information or registration for the May 18 and 19 adventure. It's going to be us live in Denver, Colorado, or you joining remotely. You make the choice. I will probably be wearing a mask, and you do what you like. So there you go. Now let's bring in our guest and let's have our office hours adventure. Remember, we are taking questions from the chat room as well as anonymously from the link on deltacx.com/links. It is a guest who has been with us before, and he is popular and well loved. So welcome back, Tom Kerwin. Tom, tell us who the heck you are.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me back, Debbie. I feel very warmed that you say that I'm well loved. I have doubts, but who am I? I've been in design for not quite as long as you, but quite a long time. I was part of the original crew before it was even called UX and all that sort of stuff. Recently, I've been riding the wave of layoffs, like so many of our friends and colleagues. So joined that hallowed crew. I've been using the time actually currently to finish off the final edits to the deck of cards I've been working on with PipDecks, which is called Innovation Tactics. It's got a lot of design and research-led sort of methods all baked into some quite actionable little cards. Some of them you'd like, some of them you probably disagree with.
That's fine. As long as somebody finds something useful in them, that's all that matters.
Hopefully so. I've got so far one person who absolutely loves them. But okay. Other people seem to be
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. My mom is so great. She doesn't know what to do with them, but she loves them. But yeah, no, it's really good. The ones I'm sharing so far, people seem to be enjoying. So I'm quite excited to get it out there finally. The other thing is is obviously on the market. So available for design leadership, coaching, facilitation. Recently, I facilitated a really cool strategy workshop for a group working on innovation around electric vehicle charging technology. And that uses a method called the Axure framework. It's on my newsletter, but I think it's so cool. And I think people here might be interested.
Cool.
So yeah, I have to share that more.
Yeah, you can find Tom on LinkedIn. His last name is Kerwin, Kerwin. Where else can people find you? Do you have a website or something?
I have a website, tomkerwin.com. And that's where, if
logical.
I get around to updating it,
Tell me about
got stuff on it.
Dentist's teeth. And hello to Craig Sullivan, who's joining. I've been thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. And Afzal says, hello, Debbie and Tom. I love when Debbie says, who the heck are you? So we did get one question in ahead of time. So I have a question ready to go for us. But other than that, the queue is short, everybody. Get your questions in through the chat or where am I? deltacx.com/links. It's so hard. I could never be a weather person. All right, so this is a long question since we do get people who tell us stories. So get ready. Everybody, pens and paper, take notes. Here we go. This question says, I'm currently doing an internship that is labeled UX design, but unfortunately the projects are UI design, where I'm being told to create UI screens with no data about users. In addition, my visual designs are not being looked at in terms of typography, contrast, balance, etc. I'm getting no training and I'm doing a lot of self-learning. I asked managers for better quality work with research, but nobody's getting back to me in a timely manner matter, or is refusing to listen to me and understanding my concern, which is making things really upsetting. My question is, should I leave the internship because it seems the company and managers don't understand UX and don't seem to care about my needs? I'm so lost how to be careful looking for other opportunities claiming to be UX when it's something different. Tom, help.
The sad truth is, as I'm sure you will agree, that an awful lot of places in the world are exactly like that. And
Yes.
it doesn't matter if you're an intern or a junior or a mid or a senior or a design leader. It's kind of the same story. And it makes it very difficult. It's always tempting to say, obviously, you should just pack it in and go somewhere where they really appreciate UX. The question is, are you going to find that place? And the real work, are you going to find it, and how are you going to find it? And the real work of us UX people tends to be finding ways to make things work better in places that don't get it yet. And so there's kind of an opportunity there. The thing that's a killer is you've got no one to learn from. You've got no one to give you feedback on what's working, what isn't working. How do you know how to make a difference? Which is a challenge. And if no one in the company is going to help you, and the internship doesn't feel like if the internship starts to feel like it is causing you psychological harm and it is making you distressed and upset, then you should pack it in. But if it's just frustrating because you wish you could be going faster, you wish you could be learning faster, maybe there's still a chance for it to play out. It's an opportunity for you to experiment and try different things out. It's an opportunity for you to read Debbie's book, read other people's books, read information around there, and see what if you try those different methods. What if you try some of that? Can you start to unpick anything? Can you talk to people in different ways that gets that conversation starting? There's an opportunity there potentially if that is something you can tackle. What do you think, Debbie?
Yeah, lots of great answers there. Thanks for that. I agree that hypothetically you could leave this internship, but it could be out of the frying pan, as we say, out of the frying pan and into the fire. You could end up somewhere else that is much the same. I also agree that most jobs do look like this. I find that the ones that don't are more likely to be agencies, though there are unfortunately a lot of agencies and consultancies who are still doing the minimum viable work and not really doing the problem finding and the problem solving. I would agree that you can certainly try to bring people's attention to this. And what I find is sometimes the gateway drug or the first opportunity is to try to see if you can introduce a little usability testing. They're not going to want the research up front. They don't want to be slowed down. But what if you were able to run a fast usability study that took a day or two, something quick, maybe unmoderated, you're watching the videos later, you show them some of the videos. Hello, Palash. So that might be possible where you can say, hey, look, I've made, you've told me what you're looking for. I've made these screens. It's really risky. If we just put them out there, we could end up with small and large problems. Why don't we just do a quick round of usability testing? It would take us a day or two. It would cost us hey, we have to pay people incentives. It would cost us $100, $300, whatever it is. And that way you can get some feedback that you desperately need about, are your designs good? And you can show people the value of, wow, it's a good thing we got that feedback and that I was able to fix those things now, rather than putting them out in the world and running the risk that we had some not so great stuff out there. Aaron says, hooray for usability testing. I'm a fan of that for sure. Yes, Aaron, a little bit biased. But if Aaron is a guy to talk to about usability testing. So anonymous question person, I hope this helps. I certainly also agree with Tom that if there are mental health issues, then you do need to consider walking away. But ultimately, an internship can look good on your resume or CV. It can be the open door to the next project. But right, you do have to ask yourself, what's going to be in my portfolio if I'm just taking UI orders? But since a lot of jobs want that, maybe showing that is okay. I don't even know anymore. That's where this hurts so much. That's where I'm super sad and want to burn it all down. But many people do want to see that
Yeah.
Tom, something to add?
The first match, well, the first match you throw to burn it all down tends to be usability testing. I agree that is the gateway drug, and it's been hugely important in pretty much every job I've done. I think I did my first usability test ever in 1999,
Ooh.
and one thing to know is it's really painful when you think you've done all this hard work on a design, making it as good as you can, and then you put it in front of real people and they tear it to shreds in the nicest way possible, but you realize how wrong you were. That experience that you have will also help the company to see what's going on too. I think, yeah, we've both seen that many times, Debbie.
Yes. So before we get to Craig Sullivan's long question, we're going to go with Violette has a short question, which I will put up on the screen right now, and then we'll get to Craig's thing. I'll take it off of your face. It's a little bit on the long side. Okay, so Violette says, "Hi, Tom. Hi, Debbie. I'm wondering what's your perspective on building trust with customers?"
That is a simultaneously short and very broad question. I suppose the question is in what context?
I feel that way too. Violette, if you're here live, can you tell us more about what type of trust with them? Is this during interviews? Is this when they use your product or service? Can you give us some context? There is a 40-second delay, so we will have to wait for that.
Right.
Meanwhile, meanwhile, we've got a long question coming from Craig, and Shweta seems to have advice for the previous person. She says, excuse me, a product manager who is somewhat customer centric can make things easier. Interview with your PM at your next job. That can help a lot. Yeah, I guess we could see if that gives us a clue. We've got Spammer on Twitch. No thanks, Spammer. You can go now. Violette says, how can we have more customers? Oh, trust the advice we're giving. Okay. I'm trying to remember where Violette works. I think she's in Canada. And I'm trying to remember what she does. I can't remember all y'all. We've got over 6,500 subscribers now. My memory only holds so much. I'm going to have to LinkedIn her to try to remember what she's doing. But any general advice, Tom, while I check that out, or, how can customers trust our advice?
One of the, it's something that I think most companies would love to be a trusted advisor to their customers and have customers listen to them and take their advice to heart. For most companies, it's very difficult because
she says they're the energy, electricity, and gas company.
Right. As in you're supplying the energy and electricity.
I think they are the utility provider. So perhaps they're giving advice on saving energy. Yeah, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there's always a difficult challenge that companies have when there's an obvious conflict of interest. So should your customers firstly believe that you genuinely have their best interest at heart? Are you acting to them like a sort of friend who'll tell them straight with love in your heart? Or are they just customers? And really you want their money and you want them to do the things you want them to do because it's in your best interests as a company. Now, I'm sure, Violette, you have their best interest in heart, but do customers ever really trust a company? I think that's where it gets tricky. Probably not. People trust people. Companies, I think, are generally not to be trusted because they're not really accountable. And so I think it's a tricky thing for you to do. The question then becomes, how much trust is needed? Do you really need them to trust you like they would a person who really has their best interest at heart? Or are you looking for ways to persuade them that something is good for them to do and it really is good for them to do? And if they do, it's a win-win for everyone. Does that necessarily need for them to trust you? I suppose would be a question. So there's layers to this always.
Yeah, totally agree. And we've got some great comments in the chat. Craig said social proof, credibility signals, company information, expert credibility, reviews and ratings, celebrity endorsement, customer quotes, case studies, real people and real stories. I almost want to joke that ChatGPT wrote that because it's such a huge list of all the possible things that could be. But I think that Tom is really hitting
Craig
on
Sullivan
something.
is a human chat GPT, I think. Has been.
He
Has been
he
for 20
knows the
years. So,
things. Yeah, he knows the things. But I think David Snodgrass in our chat is making a really good point, which is sometimes it's not that they do or don't trust your advice; it's they don't care about what you're saying. And so I think if the question is, are you giving them advice on saving energy or changing their habits or usage? That's one of the hardest things you can do on the planet is to try to change human behavior. And there's got to be something really in it for the customer or user. Otherwise, why? Why use less energy? Why turn off more lights in the house? Why run the water? Why stop running the water when I'm brushing my teeth or whatever it might be? Obviously, your energy, not water, but you know what I'm saying. So, and also my question would be, is the advice actionable? How do you know that people aren't taking the advice or don't trust the advice? Is it because you're asking them to change their utilization and then you're not seeing the change in the utilization? So I think the question is this really just a content strategy problem where you just haven't said this in a way that's compelling enough? Is it more in the delivery? Is there something where there doesn't seem to be a reason for me to bother? Violette says yes. For example, we have a program that helps customers even out their bills throughout the year so that they don't have a surprise during certain season, but very few people enrolled. And David says, if you're telling me to run my air conditioner at 75 instead of 70 in the heat of the summer, that's not going to happen. Biswajit, I see your question, and Albert, I see your question. I'm putting them on the list. We answer questions in order, so you might still be 10 or so minutes away. There are questions before you. So Violette says, we have a program that helps customers even out their bills throughout the year so they don't have a surprise during certain seasons. I would love to see a generative research project about that because, here we deal with our energy bill and we do get surprises and then we pay for them, but we don't want to change our habits. I'm only turning off the heat because it makes a squeaky sound behind the show, but I would like that heat on right now. Thank you. So I think the question. Violette says, and many people are calling our call center feeling frustrated with high bills. Generative research. I'm going to vote for generative research here. I would like to. Yeah, I would like to know more about not only people's perceptions of their bill or what they thought their bill should have been. Like every month we play Guess the Bill. The bill comes in and my husband says, what do you think it is? And I say, 210. And he goes, 186. And I go, amazing. It's good news. So
you go 180 and he goes 230 and you're like,
and that's happened too. Yeah, we've had a couple of surprise months where I'm like 180 and he's like 260 and I'm like, oh well, what happened there? So I would want to know more about people. We know they're frustrated. We know they might not be taking the action we recommend, but there's layers of the onion here that we've got to go through before we can try to create either more behavior change around utilization or better expectation setting around what your bill might be. Tom, anything to add?
Yep. I think I agree completely. It's a great example of you've come asking about increasing trust, but Debbie and Craig has given you ways that you could increase trust if that really is the problem. But there may be many other things at play here, and trust is just a part of a bigger set of stuff that's going on, most likely.
For sure. And we're getting thumbs up on research from both Craig and David. Craig says generative research, more about if this is really solving a problem, product market fit, before attempting to optimize further around the idea. Yeah, so we thought this was about do they trust us, but I think it could be about a whole bunch of other things in reality. So thanks, Violette. Great question and good to see you as always. Let's put up Craig's monster question here. I'm going to have to bring the font down and read you. I know Craig went there, but we encourage that, so that's fine. Okay, let's see. So Craig says, I have it in big font on my screen. It says, "Hi, Tom. You're one of the people I follow that think deeply about how and what we're doing with research, ideas, hypotheses, and how these turn into different endpoints. I'm from a UX background, but now run lots of experiments. One of the issues I have is making experimentation and UX folks work together, but they're often misaligned in terms of incentives and goals. My question is, we're all working on the same thing here. Why does there seem to be enmity between these functions within organizations? AKA, what are we still doing wrong that we've been doing wrong for 20 years?"
Wow. Well, I wish I had the answer because it's a great question. And yeah, a situation I recognize where we do have lots of different perspectives always coming to the table, and people who have different things going on, and different goals, really hidden goals. A couple of there's a couple of things I've found more recently, I think, which have started to unpick some of those issues. Not perfect, because nothing ever is. Um, but one of the things that I've realized through doing loads and loads of time machine exercises, this is one of the cards in my deck. It's also available. I think I've got blogs about it on my website, etc., etc. But the time machine exercise is a kind of a pre-mortem where we frame
Futurespective.
futurespective, exactly, where we frame both going to a wonderful world where everything's worked better than we all hoped, and then going to a terrible world where everything's gone so badly we wish we'd never even started whatever initiative we started. Um, if we can do this with everyone on the team, so the UX people, the experimenters, the engineers, the product managers, the data people, and the stakeholders, the sponsors, the people who came up with the idea, etc., what you start to see emerge is that everybody's hopes for how this is going to work out are often quite different. But more importantly, everyone's fears about what's going to go wrong are different. People are afraid of different things, depending on what they're going to be accountable for and what things they're perceiving about this project that might go wrong, and how that's going to affect their personal identity and their situation and the people that they're worried about, etc., etc. So typically you find that the sponsors and the people on the business side are concerned that it's not going to be done on time, that it's going to be overthought, it's going to be gold plated unnecessarily, and it's not going to deliver the value that we wanted. And typically the people on the craft side, the engineers, the designers, often the product people as well, and the experimenters balance these sometimes, but the craftspeople, they care that they're not going to get to do a good enough job. They're going to have everything cut. It's not going to work very well. It's going to be bad for the users, or the users aren't going to want it. I mean, the worst thing that I see that people are afraid of on teams is, we're going to build this, people are going to want it, they're going to use it, and then it's going to make their life worse. We actually worry about that. And so when you're in that world, you want to take your time and be very, very careful and deliberate about it. And the people on the other side want you to rush and get it done and get it out so that they can move on to the next thing, because they've got a long list of stuff that they need their necks on the line to deliver stuff. So we're always going to end up with that kind of tension going on. And the tension isn't bad. Neither side is 100% right. The perspectives are both valid. We've got to find a way to deploy resources effectively in order to achieve things. Hopefully that makes things better for everybody. And hopefully it doesn't make what we want to avoid, that it makes things worse for anybody. So that's a place to start, that time machine exercise. And it really starts to expose the hidden fears that people won't admit when you ask them directly. But when you do this sort of exercise, it starts to show that playing out. What I've found that happens then on teams is it opens up the UX people and the engineers to the idea of experimentation. It's the first time I've worked with teams. Using this method was the first time I've worked with teams where I've had senior people who are just interested in timelines actually okaying research and experimentation and saying, oh yeah, that actually might happen. People might not want it. We better go and find out, actually. And it's the first time that I've seen engineers go, oh, do you know what? We better not spend 4 weeks figuring out the perfect architecture for this, because we've now realized that we might actually kill this if it's not working. It's an experiment. So we're going to build it in a way where we can make it happen quickly, and good enough to learn. And knowing that we're going to come back and be able to do it properly if it actually is working. And by the time we do that, we'll know a lot more, so then we can do a good job. So that's my windy answer of way of saying that's the one thing I've found so far.
Love it. And I wanted to add that I've recently been writing a whole bunch of new slides on UX and CRO and UX research versus market research, and how do these all play nicely together. And I'm going to try to get that on the show in April. So I'll be doing those slides. Again, not my center of expertise, but something I have done. And these are some new slides that I'm doing at a private company next week. And then I figured, once they get it, I will share it. So Craig says, great answer. Thank you. Experiment pre-mortems are very much a thing for all the reason you mentioned. Interesting what you mentioned about, sorry, I have something blocking my screen. Interesting what you mentioned about cross-team discussion. So cool. Thank you for that excellent answer to the long question. And I hope to add something when, yes, Tom.
Can I add one more thing as well?
Tom.
Which is,
yes.
Because there's, I think, when it comes to UX people versus experimentation people, that's a classic thing. I've been both. Like, I sit in both camps. And what I realized was it's all sort of research, but there's two real fundamental flavors. There is what is, and there's what if. So what is research is what's currently going on, how are things currently working. What if questions revolve more around, well, if we do thing A or thing B, will that change stuff for people? One of the mistakes that UX people tend to make, and I've made this, is if we just know more about what is, we'll be able to predict what will happen in the future. That usually isn't the case, because complex adaptive systems, instead you need to experiment by probing, by putting something real into the world and seeing what happens. Meanwhile, the experimentation people tend to lean straight to, we must A/B test everything, we must put something out for real at massive scale in order to get fully statistically significant results, etc., etc. That's not practical for most people, and it usually doesn't work to do the things that people want it to do in many, many cases, as I'm sure you've seen, Craig. A lot of experimentation and A/B testing isn't very good. I think you have the image of the people doing rubber donuts in the car park of innovation, I think you say, which I absolutely love. And so for those people, sometimes going back to the what is can give you contextual information that gives you clues and ideas that can help you get better ideas to try with your what if. So that creating that distinction and using that when I talk with UX people and experimentation people is another thing that I think has started to help.
Cool. We've got another.
We've gone about this for a while.
Yeah, we've got another. Let's see. Raleigh says, that a question or just a comment? And Biswajit, your question is still on the list. I haven't forgotten you. There's one before you. Craig says, burning rubber in the car park with A/B testing. Smoke, lights, velocity, going nowhere. All right, let's jump into the next question. And Afzal, I see your question coming in. You will be at the end of the list. This question says, who do you think are the most important senior business stakeholders to reach out for buy-in to implement a new UX research program?
Ooh. That's a good question. Off the top of my head, you want to reach out probably to both the ones who are most resonating with the idea of doing it at the moment, and also the ones who are least into the idea, and make sure that they feel safe. So you've got some senior business holders who will, or business stakeholders will give you air cover. Those are really important to reach out to and see, can you get them to make some budget, make some space, give you some protection to go and do this without getting, derailed by the people. There are other people who will try to derail it. And so you need to have made contact with them, I would expect. It's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one. I've been in situations, I'll go back rather than trying to theorize about it. I have been in a situation where senior business stakeholders paid lip service to the idea of research and experimentation, and were really keen on the programs that we set up and all the ideas. But actually, when it came to putting experiments out there, and when it came to having the UX insights drive business strategy, then suddenly there were excuses. Experiments were killed before they went out the door, etc., etc. Despite having shown genuine results and real impact and all that sort of stuff, it all fell down. I don't know. I don't know that there's always a way to make things happen, because you don't know what knife fights are going on behind the doors of the boardroom. So that would be my sort of experience. On the flip side, I've had massive success with introducing all these sorts of methods when the CEO was fully on board with the idea of being customer obsessed or customer centric, and getting involved with research and experimentation, doing all of that properly. And he even like tied his hands to the mast like Odysseus, so he couldn't come and interfere because he wanted to. Like, that was his thing. He's a CEO because he wants to come and make decisions and make things happen. And he had to find a way to stop himself from doing that. He was self-aware enough to do it. Other senior leaders at the company left because this was happening, and he was so strong on making it happen. So there are some people you're never going to win round, and there are some people who you've kind of already won round. I'd say the people you least need to worry about are the sort of the middle ground, the people who don't really care either way. How about you, Debbie? What would you say?
Thank you for all of that. And I have to admit, I only half listened to your answer because I have so many questions coming in. I was trying to get them ready. So I apologize. One woman show. So I apologize if I say something you already said and think I've really broken new ground. So let me say that for the question about who do you work with to try to get buy-in for a UX research program, I find that we have to start with the people who have some sense of risk, because I see UX research as a de-risking adventure. Whether it's generative research, where we're going to learn earlier people's needs and tasks and perspectives, or it's evaluative and we're testing if we've built the right thing and solved the real problems. To me, I sell these as this is customer intelligence and risk mitigation. Who at the company cares about that? It really depends. It could range. Another thing that I've been tying more and more to research is what I call the three things all of us want, which are customer attraction and adoption, customer satisfaction, and customer loyalty and retention. Can we show that better research can lead to those? I wrote a slide yesterday about that I'm so excited about that I'm sorry my book has been published, because it should absolutely have been in my book, but now it'll have to go in the customer centricity blog as an addendum. But yes, I think we can tie research or lack of research or good or bad research, because we are making decisions based on that stuff. We are making strategies or prioritizing based on what we know or what we think we know, and we could be guessing. So I would probably be looking for the people who care most about reducing risk, reducing waste, anybody there who's upset that we built something and had to go back and fix it later because it wasn't quite right for customers. Sometimes somebody in sales who says, oh God, our product is just not as good as the competitors. I'm having trouble selling this thing. Great. Wouldn't it be great to do some research and learn more about what people need, so we're building the better thing and not just ripping off the competitor or whatever. So I think you have to look for the people in the company who are not meeting their goals, the people who are struggling, and the people who are suffering because of the risk and waste and mistakes that we've created. And hopefully you can show them the importance of research. See if you can just get time and money to do one really good generative study, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is. People are going to freak out, but the amount of stuff that we can know in 4 or 6 weeks can absolutely set up multiple projects in some cases for more success. So that's probably where I would start. Go ahead. Do you want to add to that?
Love that. Yeah. I just want to point out to everyone within Debbie's answer, at no point are you evangelizing UX or evangelizing
I didn't call
research.
you into a meeting saying, let me tell you why what I do is so important. I'm so important. I'm going to build empathy.
Yep. What you said instead was, you're really important and you're struggling, and I can help you. And all it takes is this.
Right.
Would you like some help
That's
to
right.
make you win? And then you're like, yeah, it's a good shout. And finding the people who are struggling to meet their targets, I think that's a much better answer than mine.
No, yours is good. Okay, we have a long question, which I'll put up on the screen. This is finally from on LinkedIn. We've got someone named Bizwajit joining us. Thank you for joining. This seems to be a question about marketing. It says, when is the right time to start marketing campaigns for a business that wants to grow? Is it once we get all the learnings from research and use them to design or redesign the services or products that we're ready to market them? This question is for a client who is a nursing home and wants us to help them grow their business through marketing, branding, and service design activities within 6 months. If I would have been the owner of that nursing home, I would have first improved the overall experience that the patients get there by improving their services, by conducting research, and then focusing on marketing. Ooh, multidimensional. Did you get all that?
I'm trying to note it down
Pen
fast
and
enough. I got
paper.
some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. What you've got there is, so the nursing home wants you to help them grow their business, and they want to get results in 6 months. And they're thinking it's time to do marketing. And
But
you are
meanwhile, there's a service design project going on to improve
at
the
the same
nursing
time.
home patient experience, or so I'm
Right. Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah. That's what I heard too. And so the
Oh, he
question is, do
added,
you,
he or she later added, how do we convince them to give more time to research before spending on marketing?
okay. Do you know what? The way I think about this these days is that marketing is a form of research. So
Hmm.
you can use marketing as research. Everything you put out as marketing is a probe for the market. It's a conversation with the market. So it depends how you see marketing. If you think marketing is making glossy brochures with the perfect text in, etc., then that's no use at all. But what about if you were to test the messaging, just the writing that's going to go in that glossy brochure in a more raw form with potential customers? That's a sort of testing that I do quite a bit. What you can get from that is an understanding of, well, which bits of this matter to potential customers? Are there things you're missing of your original draft of marketing or in the service design plan that you've laid out that isn't now being talked about in the marketing because you're not planning to do it? Now, obviously, you want to do the generative research, but there's nothing to stop you doing that at the same time. You don't need to. I think this is a question of, should we sequence things in a logical order, or should we try to kind of do everything together? And I want to cause problems for the person who came up with the double diamond, if I'm honest, because that makes it look like it should be this linear process where we find the problems, decide on the problem, find the solutions, decide on the solution. And actually, you're doing all of those things all at the same time, all the time. And it's cycles. I call it loopishness, work in a loopish way. You don't need to know everything to get the marketing right to then get success. You need to start somewhere with something that's probably quite bad, but not commit to it on the first go. So you can iterate and you can learn. That's part of your research. So while you're doing like, you could use the marketing, your initial marketing push, as a kind of a trick to get you to do more generative research. Hey, look, we've planned out the marketing brochure. I'm using brochure as a stupid example here. Maybe that's what you are planning, but it's one way that it might be. We've got to do this brochure. So we've drafted the brochure in a day. It's not going to be good, but we want to test it with people right now to see if we're on the right track. When you get people then in who are potential customers for this nursing home, you can then get them to read through the brochure, tell you what they think of it, and you can also add some generative research and talk about their lives and what brought them to this in the first place and why they were interested in talking with you about this, etc., etc. And that gives you a way to then sneak some generative research in while you're doing it. Nobody's going to be angry with you for bringing them really valuable information afterwards. They will be valuable to, they will be annoyed at you if you're saying, no, we can't meet your business goals. We have to do 3 months of research before we can start, and then we'll do the marketing, and that's going to take another 8 months, etc., etc. That's not going to win you any friends. Now, there's a flip side in that their expectations may be completely unrealistic. This is where I bring you back to the time machine exercise that I mentioned earlier. So you can play that out with the nursing home, with your team, and see what is it that they're really hoping for, what is it that they're really afraid of. That will also help you to focus your research around what matters to them most.
And Craig says, asking people about the advert, the source marketing material, very valuable idea. The thing that brought them here is worth digging into. So I think everything Tom said is amazing. I'm just going to take a different angle. I don't disagree. I'm just looking at it from a different angle. When I hear that you're doing a service design project because you need to improve the nursing home patient experience, I wonder, how bad is it now? Because my concern is that if you do marketing or advertising and you bring in new leads or even bring in new customers, will they, let's say you bring in more people to view the nursing home. Is it a mess there? Is it dirty? Or can you tell the patients are not being cared for very well? If you are bringing people into a noticeably poor experience, I would probably be saying hold off on the marketing. That's my usual advice to customers. If we're bringing somebody to something that's okay or good but could be better, okay, let's start marketing it, and then let's watch some different analytics and KPIs as we go to see if the changes we make a difference in some of the outcomes. But if this is a tough place, if this place is getting bad online reviews, if people are pulling their family members out of this place because the care is poor, or the scene is bad, I would be telling that company to pause any efforts or expenses around marketing or advertising until we've made this a place so good that once we do some of that marketing, it'll sell themselves, because people will come to this place and go, yeah, this is where I want Dad or Uncle Jim or whoever. So that's my caveat in there, which is, if this place is carnage, I would be trying to talk to the client and say, no, the marketing has to be postponed, because are you sure you want to bring new leads into this?
Yeah, that's what I call filling a leaky bucket. It's not a good way to use your marketing spend. So I completely agree with all of that. I confess, I was assuming that the asker was probably one of us design type people who tend to see that things are not perfect and want things to be perfect first before we start marketing it, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. We want things to be really, really good. The challenge, I suppose, is you could have the best nursing home in the world, but if nobody knows about it, it's not going to work. So there's always that balance.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I'm glad you were here, because I would have just given my answer and yours had a nice additional angle. So next question. And Craig says, yes, it's a slow thing to measure. It's not like a website where change can be measured quickly. More important to understand the problems before you market and fix. We have a question from Afzal, which is about books. I always dread these because I've read very few UX books, but here we go. I'm trying to understand the fundamentals of UX, and I have a list of books lined up. I was wondering if you could help me prioritize which ones I should read first, or suggest some other books. I've been told that books like About Face are more textbook-like and provide a grounded knowledge that can help contextualize things in UX. The books on my list include those related to UX research, like Just Enough Research, Interviewing Users, Articulating Design Decisions, It's Our Research, and Think Like a UX Researcher. For interaction design, the books include Design of Everyday Things, About Face, and Emotional Design. Apologies for the long question.
All of those books are good. So I don't know if I can prioritize them for you. The way that I prioritize my reading, I read a lot of books, and I love reading books. I don't finish all the books. I buy more books than I read. And what I tend to do is be guided a little bit just by intuition. So I'll look through the list of books, and one will just speak to me, and I'll go, yeah, I'll start that one. I'll start reading. And more often than not, it either is like, no, this is all stuff I know already, it's boring, or it's like, wow, I never thought of it that way. And it connects not in a linear way, but in a different, it's just different. You get something from it differently if you just follow your gut a little bit more like that. There is no right order to read the books in. There's no, you're going to have to, each of those books contains a different bit of the puzzle, and you're going to have to do the work of puzzling it all together yourself. And the books are good. There's also, you can watch people's talks. You can come to these talks with Debbie. And all of these will give you different pieces of a puzzle. Your job is to construct that puzzle for yourself. And that's a lifelong pursuit. It's not like you'll finish reading the 5 books and you are good to go. So my main advice is worry less. Just pick the one that speaks to you the most right now, today, and start reading.
Yeah, read something. I haven't read most of the books that you mentioned. I do not make time for reading. I don't enjoy reading. And so I am definitely the wrong person. I love writing, and I like to talk with people, but I don't like to read. So I'm usually the last person to give advice on books. So I don't know. But hey, Vicente is here. Good to see you. I'm going to need help pronouncing your name, of course. I'm really bad with Portuguese. But I want to remind people that there's only so much you can read about dancing. Eventually, the reading should give you some foundational knowledge, terms, approaches, methods, ideas. Where we're really getting cooking is when you give it a try, either through a practice project or an internship or an apprenticeship. So remember, read, and consume stuff, but that it's not going to make you an expert, and it's not going to really, some of it won't even really sink in until you practice it. So remember that our world is very much about practice, not just theory or knowing about techniques.
100%.
Let's see.
And I can tell you that if you read one of those books before practice, and then in a few years after a lot of practice, you read it again, it will seem like a completely different book because you're coming to it with a different perspective. And there'll be more in it at that point for you as well. So you don't need to worry about getting them all done up front. I fully agree with Debbie. And the experience you'll have is you'll read the book, the way they describe it in the book sounds great and sounds easy. You'll go and try it, you'll make an absolute hash of it, and it'll be really awkward and difficult. And then you'll figure out, oh, it's that, and you'll work out, you'll do it again, and it'll be a bit better. You'll do it again a bit better. And then you'll read the book again and go, oh, they told me all that. I just couldn't see it at the time. And you have to go through that process. It's the only way to learn.
Yep. And we've got some messages in the chat, some to you personally, but Solomon says, About Face is great if you want a foundational exposure to interaction design patterns across modality contexts. Most of the research books are great if you already have a solid foundation on critical thinking. And I'm going to pronounce Robert incorrectly. I apologize. Robert Elibekian says, Hi, Tom and Debbie. Great joining your channel. Kudos to my friend Karen for recommending it. Thank you, Karen. Tom, great to hear your thoughts again. Missing working with you, and congrats with innovation cards. Does his name sound familiar?
Yeah, I know, Rob. Good to hear from you. Hope things are working out.
Good. Lots of love going around today. Okay, we've got another question from Ralitza, who was the original person who said, have Tom Kerwin on your show. So she gets the extra lobster dinner. Okay, Ralitza says, Hello, Tom, Deb, and everyone. I noticed something about jobs lately. When I was transitioning in 2020, the demand was minimum 2 years of experience. Now ads demand 3 years of experience. I find myself wondering, how much do years matter once you actually have experience? As a hiring manager, how do you actually evaluate this? Is it a portfolio thing? Is it something on the CV? Is it a combo? What's the best way to convey things?
Wow, the best way. I never have a best. There's not a best way to do anything. There are some effective ways, emergent ways. There's some good ways and there's some bad ways, but I don't think there's ever a best way. And it's going to depend on where you're trying to apply, I think. I should have taken notes during that, and I didn't.
You want me to read it again?
I'm sorry, Roletta. Yeah. So it was like this question about years of experience.
Yeah, mostly the question was about, the jobs used to demand minimum 2 years. Many are now demanding minimum 3 years. What's really the difference? How much do years matter? And as hiring managers, how do we evaluate this?
Oh, it's a good question. So yeah, I've been a hiring manager in several roles, and the impression I get is I evaluated it differently from some other people. So different hiring managers are different. They're different people, and they are just humans who are trying to make a decision in a difficult time. They are trying to avoid certain risks. They don't want to hire. They don't want to hire the wrong person because it's expensive, and they're then going to have to work with the wrong person, and it's really difficult then to manage that. And you've got the awkward stuff of then having to let go of people or to figure out something else to do with them. All really bad for the hiring manager. Now, if you know that as a candidate, your job is really to make yourself obviously not a risk. You need to therefore understand what it is that they care about in their company, what challenges they're trying to solve, and that you are a good person at solving those challenges. And the reality from talking with hundreds of designers now, different designers are different as well. And we have different propensities, we have different skill sets. I have made a mistake where I hired someone who was a brilliant sort of interaction and visual designer, a Figma jockey par extraordinaire who was extremely good. And if you let him do that, fantastic, got on really well with the engineers, everything like that was brilliant. But the problem was we needed someone who wanted to do deep generative research and write copy and early rough versions of things to figure stuff out. And he didn't want to do that at all. And he kind of thought he might do. During the interview, he really wanted to work with us. And so he presented himself as, yeah, he would like to do that. When the push came to shove, though, and he was in the job, he was miserable, his teammates were miserable, and it became a really difficult situation. So what I would say to anyone who is trying to be hired is do your work to understand what your real strengths are and what you really are going to be good and the sorts of challenges that you enjoy solving so that you can then find a company who needs you to solve that sort of challenge. Because then you're going to be a good fit. The way you talk with them about that challenge will show them, oh yeah, this person knows what they're talking about. And then the years of experience starts to fade away in terms of the level of importance. I've hired someone with 0 years of experience before. I've also not hired people with tens of years of experience because they weren't the right fit for the company at the time. They were a right fit for another company. They weren't a bad designer. They just weren't the right designer for us with what we needed to do. So, yeah.
Love it. My angle on this is probably that to me, the years of experience don't matter specifically as much as maybe putting people into general buckets of levels of proficiency. So, for example, am I hiring for apprentice? Okay, then I expect some very foundational knowledge, but I expect to train that person. Am I hiring for junior? Okay, I expect some experience and some knowledge, but I still probably have to do some training there and a lot more oversight. How many years is that? 0, 1, 2, whatever. I'll know it when I see it. Do I need someone who's more mid-level, someone who's already worked in agency or corporate jobs for 2 years, 2 or 3, and now they're coming in with that experience behind them, and I'm a little more confident that they're independent, and I don't have to. Yes, they'll need a work review, but I'm not really there, as that much of a coach in that sense. So I'm thinking of people more in those kind of buckets, kind of like, are you apprentice, intern? Are you junior? Are you more mid-level? By the time you're senior, okay, that could be 5 or more years of experience. I'm not going to be super hard on the 5. Some people are amazing and ready to go at 4, some are 6, but by senior, I expect you to need a lot less input from me, and to be able to mentor and help those junior to you, because now you've been doing this 5-6 years and you are at that level of proficiency. So I tend to think of it more as kind of shelves, if we can think of EQ, those of you who are sound engineers like I am, if we can think of it as shelves of proficiency or buckets of proficiency rather than, oh, Ralitza has 2.5 years, I'm really looking for 3, she doesn't qualify. No, she's on the edge of that. I'll take a look at her, and everyone should. Her work is excellent. But and she is looking for work, so please hire her. But yes, so that would be my answer for that. That it's more about what bucket I think you're in, rather than am I counting the exact numbers of years that you have.
Fully agree.
Yeah, thanks.
It's kind of a shorthand, isn't it, for hiring managers to try to signal what sort of a bucket they're looking for, but it's a really rough gauge.
Right. Yeah, and everyone's going to be different. There's no standard way, but that's how we approach it. We have time for one more
Some people have had
question.
1 year of experience repeated 10 times.
Oh, ba-dum-boo. Oh, yeah. I remember working with some people who got the title senior, and I thought they were awful. So, the number of years doesn't mean you're good, unfortunately. I've been doing this forever, and there are some things I'm not great at. I'm an okay UX writer, but I'm not the best UX writer because I'm long-winded. So, sometimes I can do it, and sometimes I'm not the right person. That's okay. We have one last question, then we're super out of time. So Carla Maria says, hi, Debbie and Tom. Could you recommend how to combine or triangulate different UX research techniques? Any tips on how to decide to split the research questions, plan and synthesize insights and reporting? I think that's 2 completely different questions, but let me say that again. Okay, so the first one is combining or triangulating techniques, and the second one seems to be splitting questions, plan, synthesize insights, and reporting. Carla Maria, while we answer your first question, how do you mean the second question? Do you mean how do you split this when you have a team? I don't understand the splitting question, but let's start with combining or triangulating different techniques. Tom?
Cool. Yeah, I think it's really important because, as we all know, every single method has strengths and weaknesses. Every method has the things it's brilliant at and the things that flaws it introduces or the biases it introduces. And so by using several methods, you can ideally cover off the different biases of various methods and gain more of the strengths of all of them. And you can start to see patterns in what you're discovering. Now, that depends on you, I think, knowing all of the methods well enough to actually be able to use them. So the way I got into it and the way I recommend other people get into it is not to try to do all of the things from day one, but to make sure you've nailed down each technique in turn. And then you know more about when techniques work well and when they don't. So you can then start to triangulate a little bit more thoughtfully. If you're struggling to know how to triangulate, maybe it's not quite time yet, and maybe it's better to just stick to something, stick to the best thing you know in that situation and keep making progress. But I don't want to discourage you. So it's also a good idea to say, layer techniques up and say, if you're brilliant at usability testing, that's where I started, got really good at usability testing. It's really good for certain things. It's not good for others. But what I started to do was combine interviewing into usability testing sessions and turning them into more of like a listening lab. So it was a chance to, in a low pressure way, start to practice those interviewing techniques, which enabled the usability testing to be better as well, and started learning more. Then from there, I was able to start just doing interviewing and getting really into contextual inquiry, and then going into people's offices and using the techniques I practiced from interviewing, but now in context with somebody right there, and using the skills from usability testing to then observe and notice things about how they did their job. So it's kind of all triangulating all the time, but you can't triangulate with a tool until you've mastered how to use that tool.
And because we're just about out of time, I just want to add to that something small, which is sometimes when people, and sorry, Carla Marie, I think we're not going to have time for the second question, which was, how do you decide to apply a different technique? That is, people write entire books about that. I don't think we're going to be able, I don't think we're going to be able to tell you which technique to pick when maybe join my Slack channel, which is free, deltacx.com/links. Go to the research and testing channel. Tell us about what you're working on, and we'll see if we can make some suggestions. But what I would want to add is very often when I hear people talk about combining or triangulating different research techniques, and I'm not saying Carla Maria is asking this, but usually it's, do we need to run a survey to validate qualitative research results? And I tend to recommend against that. I'm so glad Tom is shaking his head no. He's welcome back. Well, you're welcome back anyway. That's a no from me. First of all, we can write a survey to prove or disprove absolutely anything. Surveys, in my opinion, are one of the most easily and frequently manipulated research techniques, so I would not choose that for validation. Second of all, if you are doing qualitative research well, if you are doing generative or evaluative and you have planned it, recruited correctly, made the right questions or tasks, you have a good moderation style, you analyzed it well, you know where I'm going with that, it is valid. It's valid. Good research done well is valid, and I don't want us to accidentally teach our teammates that qualitative research done well is invalid until we get the survey that says, yeah, people click the checkbox that says they like it. So just in case the question was partially about that, I recommend against thinking that qualitative research has to be validated through a quant method. Qual and quant are not the same animals, and good qual research is valid. Tom, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think I fully agree. The way I often talk about this with people is, if you invite people into your house and the first two people fall over something that's in the doorway, do you need to then watch 1,000 people do it before you decide to move that thing? Or might you just move it out of the way? And that's often what people end up in. Like, well, how big is this problem? People are falling over when they come in your house. Are you sure you just want to wait and see if 1,000 people do it? So I think the other thing you're touching on, Debbie, is there is good and bad qual, there is good and bad quant, and you can't validate anything with bad quant or bad qual. And yeah, surveys, I agree. On Surveys by Erica Hall is one of the best pieces of writing about surveys, I think, that is out there. And it is, bad surveys don't smell. It's very hard to tell if your survey is bad. And it looks really truthy when it comes back as well. And that's, so many lies are created in surveys. It's unbelievable. So yeah.
Yeah, and just quickly,
Agreeing.
Shweta says, how do we account for confidence if we get asked about it? Confidence is about quantitative research. Your margin of error, your confidence, that's about quantitative research. There isn't necessarily a set of standards for statistically significant qualitative research. The goal there is in the planning, it's the quality. So the planning, the recruiting, if you're recruiting the right people. So if people say confidence, I say most of your confidence is in recruiting the right people for the study, but then also making sure you've asked them the right questions and analyzed it well. So, but that goes true for quant as well. You could be super confident with the number of people that you've brought into the survey. If the questions are crap and you analyze it, or you analyze a good survey badly, congratulations on your confidence level.
Yep. This goes back to something Craig was Craig's question much earlier, and a response to that, which was, there is a big difference between what is research and what if type research. And what I often see people trying to do is figure out what if questions by doing more what is research. And they think, if we just do what is research like a survey at massive scale, then we'll know what's going to happen in the future. It doesn't happen like that. So if you are looking for confidence that a particular idea is going to get the results you want, you're going to need to actually put that idea out in the world and see if it does. There's no way you can know for sure up front for most of the sorts of things that we do.
Yeah, and Craig talks about that in chapter 5 of my book, Customers Know You Suck. Craig is chapter 5, everybody, and he is certainly a highlight of the book. His interview is super good fun. The book is also available on Audible if you want to hear me read it, though I did not attempt to impersonate Craig's fantastic Scottish accent.
That's disappointing.
So, yeah, we're getting more comments from people than we can handle. The show is over, peeps. We're running late. So, just a reminder that tomorrow is book club. For those of you reading my book, you can join a Google Meet to talk about it. I think we're on chapter 13 or 14. deltacx.com/links has a calendar. You can always find what's coming up on the live show there. We're going to be not broadcasting Thursday and Friday because I'm doing my workshop, my 2 half-day workshop. It used to be called Transforming Toward Customer Centricity, now renamed Strategizing Products and Customer Experiences. Again, cxcc.to/space for Strategizing Products and Customer Experiences. You can still join it. Shweta says, Tom, what was the survey read you spoke of again? Was there a book or something you said?
So it's available as a little book, but it's on Medium and the web in general. If you search for On Surveys by Erica Hall, which is Erica with a K, Hall, like the reverb, and then that's it. You'll find it. It's banging. I've also got an article which is called "Don't Send That Survey. Here's what to do instead."
Someone just sent an anonymous question. We don't have time for it. I'll have to answer it next week. And Biswajit says the nursing home has a lot of empty beds and a lot of bad online reviews. So I'm thinking those beds are empty for a reason, and we're going to have to fix this place up before we market it. Okay.
Agreed.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks so much to Tom. I hope you'll come back in maybe another X months and we'll have you back as our super guest. Good luck in your job hunt. Remember, Tom is searching everybody. If you are hiring, track him down. And otherwise, I'll see everybody next week for shows. Tom, anything you want to add? Where can people find you?
Just to say thank you so much for having me, Debbie. It's always a pleasure. I'd be delighted to come back again. I always enjoy these chats. You can find me at tomkerwin.com, spelling as on the screen right there. The things that are interesting that I've got coming out soon, innovation tactics, the card deck. I also teach a course about confident innovation using some of these what is and what if type research methods. So those things are all available. And then a big blog with loads and loads of stuff on it.
Excellent. Well, then I'm going to say goodbye and play us out of here. And everybody be well, and see you next week. Thanks. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are